This is, in part, a story that illustrates County Donegal and Glenveagh, the heart of Donegal, its past and present, drawing on its varied social and historical aspects. Geographically, Donegal's coastal location gives rise to its spectacular views and a relationship with the sea, as evidenced in the folkways and lifestyles of its people. The surf pounding its threats against cliff bases on Atlantic Drive and sweeping, pale, sandy bays and beaches are intrinsic to our mental image of Donegal, where chill green blue water washes up on some of the most perfect coastal environments of northwest Europe. Inland, the scenery remains full of interest, with its rich contrast of mountains against flat blanket bog landscapes. Ever-dominant Errigal rises proudly out of the surrounding lands, its blue-grey sparkles betraying its ancient volcanic origins. Lowlands are dotted with the colours of the mountain plants, brown and mauve against the yellow flower of the gorse. Small green fields stretch away from the eye, edged with tufts of hedgerow. And yet, large stretches of Donegal's mountain lands remain untouched, the rocky environment undisturbed since its very creation. Sheep farming takes place on dry, higher areas, while below, cattle graze on cultivated grassland pastures alongside the crops. The toil of the hill farmer often blinds him to this land of stubborn beauty on which he battles to tend land and stock. The life he leads is not as contented as his midland cousin, who has no rocky steeps to contend with and whose flat vistas may provide more security, but surely less appreciation of the myriad forms that nature displays in this land. Sea fishing has become an important part of the Irish economy, and Donegal makes its own contribution. At Lacca, situated beside Donegal Castle, one can see salmon netting in progress in the picturesque estuary which has continued unchanged over the centuries. While modern harbour facilities with access to the open sea allow larger boats equipped for offshore fishing to operate from a relatively small fishing town like Downings, foreign and native craft tie up side by side to use the facilities at Donegal's chief fishing port, Kilmacrenan. The large and modern boats are fitted with every technological aid for fish location and navigation, which marks the development of this industry. Here in Kilmacrenan, fishing and fish processing take on a vibrancy that reflects serious input to the Irish economy. There are two interesting examples of traditional Donegal industries which continued to be successful in a changing world of innovation. The McKinney family at Letterkenny had an old established business importing spices and sugars. Today, their confectionery company, Oatfield Sweets, boasts modern manufacturing processes which have allowed them to achieve success at home and in markets abroad. From sheep farming and the old textile tradition through modern weaving methods and innovative design, McNutts of Downings compete successfully in the fashion trade throughout the world. McNutts is a superb example of success through adaptation, as Alexandra McNutt explains.
It had got to the stage that tweed was only being used by old ladies to wear to church on Sunday best, and it wasn't being used by the young people at all. The styles and shapes that the fabric was being made into were very conservative and generally very boring. So we got our fabrics and we approached the international market. We went straight to the designers and we went to the best designers, and we were very lucky because they liked our fabric. And from then on, and at the minute, these designers all over, including Japan, mainly Japan, are using our fabrics. I think as well, with the shop here in Downings, Mr. McElhenney, for instance, in Glenveagh, came to our shop here in Downings and brought an awful lot of influential people with him. Anyone who came to stay at Glenveagh were always brought over here. They were brought chauffeur-driven so that they could buy the fabric and bring presents back home with them. And I think really that that played quite an important part in spreading the McNutt name amongst some very nice circles.
Many Donegal sporting and leisure activities have their roots in the natural environment. And now both tourists and Donegal people know the lakes and rivers which are a paradise for the angler, whether he fishes salmon or brown trout in scenic surroundings. Relaxing by a cosy turf fire in the local pub is one way that the tired huntsman can savour a day spent with his dog on the mountain in the pursuit of pheasant, woodcock or grouse. The earliest inhabitants of Donegal left their mark on the landscape in the shape of dolmen tombs and standing stones. One of their sophisticated structures stands on the hill of Alach in Inishowen. The Green Hall of Alach, as it is known, is believed to be the residence of Adair, the chief god of the Tuatha De Danann, and built around 2000 years BC. It served the High Kings as a residence until the 5th century. Its walls, which are 20 feet wide at the base and 17.5 feet high, and its elevated position on the hill, made it difficult to attack. It was restored to its present condition in 1848, while the unusual but famous modern church below takes a visual theme from the architects of the earlier era. The castellations and fortresses that remind us of the medieval phase are well represented by the old tower portion of the O'Donnell Castle in Donegal town. The O'Donnells were the most important clan in Donegal, and its most influential chieftain was Red Hugh. O'Donnell's lineage can be traced back to Niall of the Nine Hostages, High King of Ireland from 377 to 405, and he was also a direct descendant of St. Columcille, who began his mission in Iona in 563. The O'Donnells, combined with the O'Neills, chieftains of Tyrone, represented a formidable alliance against English rule in Ireland. Their influence was to extend far beyond the confines of their northern territories, and was only to end in their eventual defeat at the Battle of Kinsale on Christmas Eve 1601. Donegal Castle also has links with both the O'Donnells and the O'Neills. It was here that Red Hugh O'Donnell, eventually to succeed as chieftain of his clanspeople, was fostered. O'Donnell was fated to die in exile in Spain. Donegal Castle later figured when Owen Roe O'Neill stayed here with a large French force prior to the Battle of Benbarb in 1646, from which he emerged victorious. September 1607 marked perhaps the most poignant moment in the history of Gaelic Ireland. It was here at Rathmullen on Lough Swilly that O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, and Rory O'Donnell, Earl of Tirchonhill, with 40 of their kinsfolk and followers, sailed into exile. Let the archaic words of Red Hugh O'Donnell's biographer capture the moment. There were lost, besides nobility and honour, the authority and sovereignty of the Gaels of Ireland to the end of time. The way was open for the colonization of Ulster. Through various phases, the Anglo-Irish Protestant tradition grew, and the big house appeared as a feature on the landscape. The peasants lost their clan's claim to the land and became tenants in the shadow of the landlord. The landlord system was broken down by the radical 19th century Land Acts, which finally allowed the ordinary people of Ireland to purchase the land they tended through the British government from their landlord. The way was then paved for the early modern Irish agricultural tradition. Donegal was no exception to this innovation, and throughout the county, modern families can explain exactly who the last big landowners of any area were before the local people who lived off the land secured their farms. Their lives were often precarious, and the work was hard.
When I was growing up round here, it was all horsepower and water power. The horses did all the work on the farm, and it was hard work for the men that had to work with them as well, because they had to be up in the morning to get the horses fed before they started the day's work. And of course, a lot of the crops that were grown on the farm had to go to feed the horses, because it was important to keep them well fed, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be able to do the work. And then, of course, the horses also thrashed the corn after the crops were taken in, and they had them attached to a device which they thrashed the corn, a thing we used to call the ring course, where the horses moved round and thrashed the corn inside in the barn. Later on, the corn would be taken to the mill at New Mills, at Pachygaller's New Mills, where the water power was used to grind the corn. And the farmer would come back with the oatmeal when he had taken the corn down. And then, of course, most of the farmers would have an acre or so of flax as well. And it was water power that was used to scotch the flax. This was also a hard-earned crop as well. There was plenty of hard work attached to it. But when it was dried and got to the flax mill, and then it was scotched in the mill, and that was the first process of flax. In recent times, of course, tractors and modern machinery do nearly all the hard work, like setting potatoes and that type of work. It was back-breaking work in the past, is all done by machinery now. And there's very, very little handwork done at all. Except, of course, you might see in some of the little hill farms, people yet might use a scythe to cut meadow hay or things like that. and sometimes maybe if there was a small bit of grass to be cut, even a local farmer might use a scythe. But other than that, all the back-breaking work is gone. The machinery has taken the toil out of it.
The picturesque Gartan Valley is rich in its associations with the clan leaders of ancient Ireland. Donegal's most famous son, St. Columcille, was born here in 521. A large Celtic cross marks his birthplace at Lecknacool. A mottled flagstone beside the cross is believed to be the spot where the saint was born. Translated from the Gaelic, Lecknacool means the flag or stone of loneliness, and it was used as a place of solace over the centuries for those contemplating leaving their native land to emigrate far away. Situated beyond the village of Churchill lies Temple Douglas, where the saint was baptized prior to his education at Kilmacrenan. The ivy-clad ruins of the old stone tower is the only remaining portion of Kilmacrenan Abbey, the site of the saint's early schooling. Nearby in the modern village church is the stone font, which is believed to have been used during the saint's baptism. It is still in use. In Gartan, on the hillside above Loch Kibben, is the site of Columcille's oratory. It is marked by a stone chapel with an ancient graveyard adjacent to it, and still remains a place of pilgrimage and devotion. The internationally renowned painter Derek Hill chose to live in Gartan over 30 years ago. Recently, he made a gift of his original house, St. Colum's, to the Irish state. The house and its associated gallery contain a lifetime's collection of valuable and important artworks.
I loved the country and thought it marvellous country, and then came back again a bit later and saw this house, which was then empty. It had been a little hotel, a sort of gents' fishing hotel, after it ceased to be the glebe. And I came and I thought, well, that is really the house that I'd love to live in, because it faced the right way, it was on a lake, and I love water, and the trees with the barren hills behind, and it was everything I liked in the way of a position for a house. And one of the reasons is the landscape to me is unique when it's beautiful and sunny. It isn't always, of course, but the peace and quietness of the place, and this beautiful lake which is completely uncluttered by tourism, although I think it's a good thing that people should come and visit it. I mean, if you had things like caravans and chalets all along it, it would be fatal. And at one moment, the other side of the lake, Lochvey House, was for sale for exactly that. So I bought it. I couldn't really afford it then, but luckily I then sold it immediately for exactly what I paid for it to the vocational educational people who were going to open it as a sort of school of nature pursuits and nature study and everything. And then I'm glad they opened the little heritage centre the other side of the lake here. They showed me the plans, because there is an agreement that any plan made on that land which I'd bought and then sold to them, I am consulted about buildings and things there, but I agreed that the little building, which I think is very good and very links in with the countryside and with the natural sort of buildings around, and I hope that'll also be a great draw. in Glenveagh. It's fantastic. Because the Chester Beatty Library, which is one of the greatest collections in the world of Japanese, Islamic and other manuscripts, don't have as much a year, and it's open all year, as we have in the summer in this little gallery here in Church Hill. And they can't believe that we have so many people here now, but it is an attraction for Donegal, and that's what I hope for, because I love the county, and I've always been terribly happy here, and the people have always been very good to me. And so that's what made me decide I'd like to thank them and give it to them. And it's owned by everybody local, as well as everybody else, this place now, and it's a gift to them.
It was beauty such as this that first attracted landlord John George Adair from Queen's County to Donegal and Glenveagh in the year 1857. He bought land, and in 1873 the castle at Glenveagh was completed. However, trouble between Adair and his Donegal tenants had begun before this date. The tenants were angered by the forced removal of their stock from the mountains because of Adair's introduction of Scottish sheep. Adair also became involved in a scuffle with the tenants of a local landlord, a Mr. Johnson, during a shooting party, after which the Lord Chief Baron's Court in Dublin found Adair guilty of assault. Soon he had bought all of Derryveagh along with much of Garton, and now considered himself the undisputed master. The local courthouse was situated in the nearby village of Churchill, and it was here that Adair claimed that his sheep were being killed by the tenants. But local magistrates ruled that no sheep of Mr. Adair's was maliciously done away with, inclement weather being a much more likely cause. Events culminated when Adair's Scottish land steward, Murray, was found murdered on the mountain. A tenant was charged, but the jury failed to reach a verdict. It was never established who was responsible for the killing. Adair extracted a terrible revenge on his tenants on the 8th and 9th of April, 1861.
He evicted over 40 families along that brave face of Derryveagh. I think actually it ran from Doherty or Lochbarra right down to the Garton area. But most of them went to Australia. Adair was very cruel indeed. He wasn't an acceptable character at all in the community.
Local police had refused to take part in the action. The evicting forces, guarded by militia from Dublin and constabulary from Sligo and Leitrim, levelled cottage after cottage.
Oh, garden blue lake of the Swan, with your waters of sad, bitter tears, do you weep for the days that are gone, and lament for the heartbreak shore, or the wind in the reeds making green. Will some presence remain evermore, to hold fast to the things that have been? Deravay, Lord of valley and plain, while I gaze on your high rocky steeps, shining wet in the soft summer rain. Could it be that your granite heart weeps?
In 1885, Adair died while abroad. His wife Cornelia was of a gentle disposition, and she developed the Glenveagh Gardens and Deer Shoot. She died in 1921, aged 90. Glenveagh's next owner was Harvard professor Kingsley Porter, who later disappeared in mysterious circumstances during a visit to Inishbofin Island. Henry McElhenney was the millionaire curator of the Philadelphia Museum of Fine Art and had Donegal ancestry. He became the owner of this part of northwest Donegal in 1937. As Mrs. Adair had prepared the area around the castle for an ornamental garden, Henry McElhenney concentrated on this aspect of Glenveagh. The gardens were laid out in formal styles, with each portion perfectly balancing and complementing the shrubs and themes around it. The initial inspirational work done by Mrs. Adair was appreciated by Mr. McElhenney, who sought to consolidate the various themes. He brought in the architects Lanning Roper and Jim Russell to expand on the original ideas. The blueprints from these famous gardeners were executed by local men to produce the fine results that are internationally recognized today. Shelter belts of pine were planted as windbreaks against the gusts blowing from the lake. The gardens could now become home to many variations of magnolia and azalea shrub. Many colors of rhododendron can be seen, from creamy whites to episcopal purples and reds, some shrubs stretching to heights of 30 feet or more. The largest section of the ornamental area is the pleasure ground, in which a smooth green lawn is bordered by many tender flowering shrubs. There is a skillful linking of the different garden areas, with meandering walkways and stone paths adding to the overall harmony. Gardens are noted as being graced with outdoor furnishings, with a fine example of a classical statue garden, including Italian ornamental containers and seats. The dappled Belgian walkway was named after its creators, Belgian soldiers convalescing at Glenveagh after World War I. One of Mr. McElhinney's personal delights was in introducing elements of design into the wild areas of the garden, which looked as if they had been part of the landscape for hundreds of years. These apparently ancient moss-covered steps lead to a plateau high above the castle and were only completed in the early 60s. And yet, perhaps the most successful element of these ornamental gardens lies not in their stark contrast with the wild hills and moors sweeping up behind them and falling away gracefully below, but in the fact that on the periphery a certain harmony is detected. The ornamental, the alpine, woodland and moorland graduating smoothly in an undulating and spectacular relationship, blending easily with tendrils of one flowing into another. Access to the interior of the castle is now available to visitors, giving another glimpse of the lifestyle and tastes of Mr. McElhinney.
There's a national parks philosophy across the world, and there are well in excess of 100, I forget how many national parks, and their purpose is to conserve special areas, usually very large areas of wilderness, with a view to protecting the landscape and the flora and the fauna. So places like Yellowstone and big parts of Alaska in the United States, the Serengeti in Africa, these famous wildlife places are protected. In Ireland we have a smaller landmass and we have smaller national parks, but primarily what they are about, in fact, is conserving the landscape and the flora and fauna. Now in Glenveagh we have the bonus of having a castle and splendid gardens, and while they are probably the main attraction for tourists who come here, our primary serious purpose is to conserve the land and the wildlife that's here. What we have here, first of all, we have the biggest herd of red deer in the country, around about 750. We also have the remnants of some very ancient oak forest, which one time would have covered the whole country, or a large part of it. And we take an interest in everything from the biggest, from the deer, down to the smallest. And for example, a new species of fly, which would be not much bigger than a pinhead, was discovered here 2 years ago, completely new to science. But we don't necessarily advertise that. It's not of great interest, I don't think, to most of the people who come. Somebody said to us a while ago that people come for a pilgrimage to the Glenveagh Gallery and for an outing to Glenveagh. And I think for a lot of people that Glenveagh is a beautiful place to go for a day out. So when the Office of Public Works took over from Mr. McElhenney, they did it in two sections. First of all, in 1975, they took on the lands of the park. And in so doing, they were able to continue what was already a protected area. And they had actually quite a serious responsibility, because when it was private, there weren't that many visitors. They were facing a situation where it would go public and they would be attracting in people. So they had to devise a plan in which they could protect the place and at the same time show it off, it's a real balancing act. And the way was helped by the fact that Mr. McElhenney stayed in the castle for another 8 years after the lands of the park were taken on. So that time was spent planning, and the result was the visitor centre at the very edge of the park, and the people are focused there, and the castle and the people are focused there again. But the main wilderness has been protected, and of course one of the main things is that people can't bring cars in. We have probably 4,000 or 5,000 school children a year coming now, and they can't but go away spreading the word, if you like, that we have to protect the special places. And in fact, it's not just the special places, but we hope, of course, that people will protect everywhere and that the very special places get the best of the treatment.